Daniel moved to a small, peaceful town surrounded by green hills and quiet roads. After years of living in a busy city, the calmness of the countryside felt refreshing. He had accepted a job as a school teacher there, hoping for a new beginning away from noise and stress. The town was small, the people friendly, and life moved at a slow, gentle pace. It seemed like the perfect place to start over. But small towns had their own ways of doing things. There was only one doctor, and most of the time people went to a woman everyone called Mrs. Harlow. She lived at the edge of the town in a wooden house covered in vines and flowers. She was known for making herbal medicines and home remedies that she claimed could cure almost anything. People trusted her more than they trusted hospitals. For weeks, Daniel lived happily in his new job. His students liked him, and his neighbors often brought him vegetables from their gardens. Everything seemed normal until one rainy evening. After a long day at school, he came home with a pounding headache and a burning fever. He brushed it off, thinking it was just the change in weather. But by the next morning, his body felt weak, and his head was spinning. His neighbor, Mr. Carter, noticed he looked unwell and suggested he visit Mrs. Harlow. "She's been treating folks around here for years," the old man said kindly. "Her medicines work faster than anything from the city." Daniel hesitated. He wasn't used to homemade treatments, but the nearest clinic was miles away, and he didn't have the strength to travel. So that afternoon he wrapped himself in a coat and walked through the drizzle to Mrs. Harlow's house. When he knocked on the door, she opened it with a warm but tired smile. Her gray hair was tied in a loose bun, and her hands were stained with the colors of herbs and plants. The smell of dried leaves and old wood filled the air. The house was full of small bottles and glass jars, each labeled with faded handwriting. "You look pale, dear," she said softly. "Come in, sit down." "Tell me what's wrong." Daniel told her about his fever, dizziness, and sore throat. She nodded as if she already knew. Moving slowly around her wooden table, she opened bottles, crushed some dried leaves, and poured a thick, dark liquid into a small glass bottle. "Take 2 spoonfuls of this tonight," she instructed. "You'll feel better by morning. It's a special mixture I make myself. Works faster than any doctor's medicine." He looked at the label. It was handwritten and smudged, the words barely visible, but he trusted her confidence. After all, everyone in town spoke highly of her. He thanked her, paid a small amount, and walked back home with the bottle in his hand, unaware that this visit would change his life. That night, Daniel followed her instructions. He took 2 spoonfuls of the medicine, which tasted bitter but soothing. For a short while it seemed to work. His body relaxed and his fever felt lighter. But a few hours later his heart began to race. His hands trembled, his vision blurred, and he felt an unusual tightness in his chest. The room spun around him and he could barely stand. Panicking, he tried to reach for his phone, but his hands were too weak. The air around him seemed to grow heavier. His thoughts became slow and foggy. Just as he was about to lose consciousness, he heard a knock on the door. Through the dizziness, he managed to open it. Mrs. Harlow stood there, soaked from the rain, holding a lantern. Her face was pale and her eyes were wide with worry. "I had a bad feeling," she said quickly, pushing past him into the house. She looked at the bottle on the table, picked it up, and froze. For a long moment, she didn't say a word. Then she whispered, her voice trembling. "Oh no, this isn't right." Daniel could barely hear her. His body felt heavy and he struggled to breathe. He asked her what was wrong, but instead of answering, she placed the bottle in her apron pocket and said in a shaky voice, "No one must know about this." Her whisper cut through the silence like a blade. He looked at her in confusion, trying to understand. "What do you mean?" he managed to say weakly. "I'll fix it," she said quickly. "You just need rest. Don't tell anyone, please." Before he could ask more, she went into the kitchen and began mixing another potion. The sound of glass clinking and liquids pouring echoed through the small house. When she returned, she handed him a cup of something warm and sweet-smelling. "Drink this," she insisted. "It will make you feel better." Too weak to argue, he drank it. The taste was strange but calming. Within minutes, his breathing eased a little. She stayed by his side until he drifted into a light, uneasy sleep. The next morning, he woke up feeling slightly better but confused. The events of the night played in his mind like a dream. Had she really said no one must know? What was in that bottle? When he checked the table, the first medicine bottle was gone. Later that day, Mrs. Harlow visited again. Her usual calm smile was gone. Her eyes darted nervously around the room. "You're feeling better, yes?" she asked. Daniel nodded weakly. "What happened last night? What was in that bottle?" She avoided his eyes and said, "Sometimes herbs react differently. It's rare, but you were unlucky. I made a mistake with the mixture." "It won't happen again," he frowned. "A mistake? You mean you gave me the wrong medicine?" Her hands shook slightly as she poured tea for him. "Please," she said quietly, "don't talk about it. People here depend on me. If they stop trusting me, the town will lose its only help. I didn't mean to harm you." Her words made Daniel uneasy. He wanted to be angry, but her trembling voice stopped him. She looked so frightened, almost desperate. Out of sympathy, he agreed to keep quiet for the moment. Over the next few days, his condition improved, but his mind stayed restless. Something didn't feel right. Whenever he passed her house, she quickly looked away. He began noticing small whispers among the townspeople. Someone else had fallen ill after visiting Mrs. Harlow. A farmer's wife complained of strange dizziness after taking one of her tonics, but no one dared to accuse her. Daniel started putting the pieces together. The way Mrs. Harlow had shown up at his door, her terrified reaction, the missing bottle, and her insistence that no one should know, it all hinted at something serious. He decided he had to find out what was really going on. One night he couldn't sleep. The sound of the rain outside reminded him of the night he almost collapsed. He decided to visit her again the next day, not for medicine, but for the truth. But when he went to her house the following morning, the door was locked. The curtains were drawn and the yard was silent. A neighbor passing by said she hadn't seen Mrs. Harlow since yesterday. Daniel's heart sank. He didn't know what she was hiding, but he was sure now that her mistake wasn't just a small one. Something much darker lay behind her fear, and as he walked back home, he realized this quiet town might not be as peaceful as it looked. The bottle, the whisper, and the secret had started something that was far from over. Days passed, and Mrs. Harlow's house remained closed. The wooden door that once smelled of herbs and warm tea was now covered in dust. People in town began whispering that she had fallen ill herself, or perhaps gone to visit relatives. But Daniel felt something deeper, something hidden behind her silence. He still felt weak, though his fever was gone. The memory of that night haunted him. The whisper, her fear, and the way she had rushed to hide the bottle. Every time he closed his eyes, he could hear her voice again. No one must know. One morning, his colleague Anna came to check on him. She was a kind woman in her early 30s who worked at the same school. When Daniel told her everything that had happened, she listened carefully, her face growing serious. "Daniel," she said softly, "you could have died. That woman isn't a real doctor. You need to see a proper one." Daniel sighed. "The hospital is miles away. And I'm better now. Maybe it really was just a mistake." Anna shook her head. "A mistake that nearly killed you? You're still pale. I'm taking you to the next town tomorrow. No arguments." The next day, she borrowed a neighbor's car and drove him to a small clinic about an hour away. The doctor there, a calm and middle-aged man, examined Daniel carefully. After taking some blood tests, he looked concerned. "Mr. Daniel," the doctor said, "you've been exposed to a chemical compound not meant for human use. It's something used in veterinary medicine. It can cause serious reactions." Daniel froze. His mind raced. Veterinary medicine? That explained everything, the shaking, the shortness of breath, the dizziness. He told the doctor about Mrs. Harlow's homemade medicine and her panic afterward. The doctor's face grew stern. "You should report this. She could harm others without realizing it." But Daniel hesitated. He remembered her pale face and trembling hands. She hadn't done it out of cruelty. She had looked terrified. I'll think about it," he said quietly. When they returned to town, Anna couldn't stop talking about it. She could be poisoning people. This has to stop, but Daniel wasn't sure. The town depended on Mrs. Harlow. Many people couldn't afford hospital trips. Reporting her might destroy her completely. That evening, as he sat by the window, he saw two people talking near the gate, Mrs. Harlow and another woman. Mrs. Harlow looked thinner and more fragile than before. She noticed Daniel watching and turned away quickly. The next morning, he decided to visit her again, not with anger, but for answers. He walked slowly to her house. When she opened the door, she looked exhausted, her eyes red as if she hadn't slept in days. "Daniel," she whispered, "you shouldn't be here." "I need to talk to you," he said gently. "Please, just tell me the truth." For a long time, she said nothing. Then she motioned for him to sit. The house smelled different now, less like herbs, more like dust and damp air. "I made a mistake," she said finally, her voice breaking. "I gave you the wrong bottle. It was meant for animals. I labeled it wrong. I was distracted that day. I didn't mean for it to happen." Daniel looked at her quietly. "Then why did you tell me no one must know?" Tears filled her eyes. "Because this isn't the first time," she whispered. "Others have fallen sick too. I didn't want anyone to lose faith in me. This town depends on me. If I stop, who will help them?" Her confession hit him hard. He realized the fear behind her actions wasn't just guilt. It was desperation. She had been carrying the weight of her mistakes in silence. Before he could respond, Anna appeared at the doorway. She had followed him, worried he might fall ill again. When she heard Mrs. Harlow's words, she stepped forward firmly. "You've been giving people the wrong medicines. You could have killed someone." Mrs. Harlow looked down. "I only wanted to help. My husband was a pharmacist before he passed away. I learned everything from him. After he died, I didn't have money to get a license, but people kept coming. I couldn't turn them away." Anna's tone softened slightly. "You can't play with people's health. You need to stop this." Daniel stood between them. "We can fix this," he said, "but not by hiding it anymore." Mrs. Harlow wiped her eyes. "If the truth comes out, they'll hate me. They'll throw me out of town." "Maybe," Daniel said quietly, "but hiding it is worse. Someone could die next time." There was a long silence. Then she nodded weakly. "Do what you must." That afternoon, Anna called the local authorities. Within a few days, 2 inspectors came to the town to investigate. They found several bottles in Mrs. Harlow's home with missing or wrong labels. Some of them were years old. A few contained substances used for animals. The townspeople were shocked. Some were angry, others heartbroken. Many had trusted her for years. A few defended her, saying she had always helped them when doctors refused to visit. But the truth couldn't be ignored. Mrs. Harlow was told she could no longer sell or prepare medicines. She wasn't arrested, but her reputation was gone. Her little house became quiet. The laughter and chatter that once filled her garden disappeared. Daniel recovered fully after a few weeks, but the experience changed him deeply. He often thought about Mrs. Harlow, not with anger, but with sadness. She had made terrible mistakes, but she wasn't evil. She was a lonely woman who tried to help others the only way she knew, and in doing so had lost everything. Anna encouraged Daniel to write about what happened, not as a complaint, but as a lesson. "People need to understand the danger of silence," she said. "If you don't speak up, more people could suffer." So Daniel wrote his story, not naming names, but describing what had happened in that small town. He wrote about trust, about fear, and about how good intentions can turn into harm when mixed with secrecy. The article was published in a small medical magazine and later shared online. Many readers praised his honesty and courage. Months later, Daniel prepared to leave the town. His contract at the school had ended and he wanted a fresh start. On his last day, he took one last walk through the quiet streets. The air smelled of rain again, just like the day he had first fallen ill. When he reached Mrs. Harlow's house, he saw her sitting on the porch, quietly watering her plants. Her hands trembled, but her eyes looked calmer than before. She saw him and gave a faint smile. "Leaving town?" she asked softly. He nodded. "Yes, I wanted to say goodbye." "Thank you," she said quietly. "For not hating me." Daniel smiled gently. "You made mistakes, Mrs. Harlow, but I think you cared more than most people ever do." She looked down, tears shining in her eyes. "I only wish I had asked for help sooner." He nodded, understanding. Then he turned and walked away, feeling the weight of everything that had happened. As he drove out of town, he looked back one last time at the small wooden house surrounded by vines. The whisper, the fever, the secret, all of it had changed his view of trust and kindness forever. He realized that sometimes silence can be more dangerous than mistakes. And sometimes even the kindest intentions can lead to disaster when hidden behind fear. The hills faded in the distance and the town disappeared from view. But the lesson stayed with him for life. That truth, no matter how painful, must never be whispered away.